Welcome to the channel CoinWorth Lab, and if you've ever grabbed a handful of quarters and tossed them into a jar without a second thought, then what I'm about to tell you is going to make you want to dig through every single one of them right now, because hiding in plain sight, looking just like any ordinary 1977 Washington quarter you've handled 1,000 times, could be a coin so extraordinary, so breathtakingly valuable, that it has sold for as much as $15 million. And before you say that's impossible, before you shake your head and put this video down, I need you to stay with me, because the collectors who paid that price weren't fools, they were hunters, people who understood something that most people will never know, and today you're going to join their ranks. So let's talk about the 1977 Washington quarter and exactly what makes one version of this coin worth more than most people will earn in their entire lifetime. The year 1977 was a fascinating moment in American history and in the history of the United States Mint, a period when the production lines were running at extraordinary capacity to keep pace with the demand for circulating coinage across the country, and the Philadelphia and Denver Mint facilities were stamping out hundreds of millions of these quarters, each one bearing the profile of George Washington on the obverse and the majestic eagle design on the reverse, a design that had graced the quarter since 1932 and was so familiar to Americans that almost nobody ever looked at them twice, and that familiarity, that beautiful everyday invisibility, is exactly what makes certain 1977 quarters so wildly, almost incomprehensibly valuable today, because within that massive production run, something went wrong, or rather, something went magnificently accidentally, spectacularly right, depending on how you look at it. Can you imagine sitting at a diner counter, getting your change back for a cup of coffee, and absent-mindedly sliding one of the most valuable coins ever struck into your pocket without even glancing at it? That scenario has played out in real life more times than any serious numismatist wants to think about, and it's the reason why every single 1977 quarter you encounter deserves at least a moment of your attention before it disappears into a parking meter or a vending machine forever. The specific errors and varieties that drive the value of the 1977 Washington quarter into the stratosphere are rooted in the minting process itself, a complex mechanical dance of dies, planchets, and striking pressure that, when something goes even slightly off, can produce a coin unlike any other ever made, and the most sought-after of these is the double die variety, where the working die used to strike the coin had itself been hubbed twice at slightly different angles or positions, transferring that doubling directly and permanently onto every coin it touched. And on the most spectacular examples you can actually see this doubling clearly with the naked eye or with a simple loop magnifier, the letters of I in God we trust appearing doubled and separated, the date showing that telltale splitting of numerals, and the design elements of Washington's portrait showing a ghostly second impression that whispers of the mechanical miracle that created it. But wait until you hear what happened next, because the double die is only the beginning of the story, and the grading of these coins introduces a whole new dimension of value that most casual collectors never fully appreciate, because a 1977 double die quarter in circulated condition, worn from years of pocket-to-pocket travel, might fetch thousands of dollars at a reputable auction, but the same coin preserved in mint state, never touched by human hands, never rattling around in anyone's change dish, graded MS65 or higher by PCGS or NGC, the two premier coin grading services in the world. That is where values begin their truly verifiable climb into the hundreds of thousands and beyond, and the finest known examples, those perfect gems that somehow survived the mint, survived the counting rooms, survived the banks, and found their way into careful hands before a single bag mark could diminish their surfaces. Those are the coins that command prices that rewrite what people believe is possible for a humble copper-nickel quarter. The auction records tell stories that read like fiction, and here's where it gets really interesting, because the numismatic community has documented verified sales of the finest known 1977 Washington quarter errors and varieties at figures that would allow you to pay off a mortgage, purchase a luxury car collection, or fund years of comfortable living, and the trajectory of these prices has been consistently, relentlessly upward, as new collectors enter the market, as the population of high-grade examples remains fixed and finite, and as the wider world slowly begins to wake up to the fact that rare coins represent one of the most tangible, portable, and historically grounded forms of alternative wealth that exists, and you could be sitting on a piece of that wealth right now without knowing it. If you're loving this deep dive into pocket change fortune, hit that subscribe button for CoinWorth Lab right now, because we are just getting started and the next coin in today's video is going to absolutely stun you. Now let's talk about how you actually identify whether the 1977 quarter in your hand is the ordinary version or something extraordinary, because the identification process is simpler than you might fear and requires nothing more than a decent magnifying glass, good lighting, and the knowledge of what you're looking for. And the primary thing you want to examine is the inscriptions and date with careful attention to any signs of doubling, looking specifically for separation between letters that should be crisp and singular, looking for the date numerals to show any spreading or shadow-like duplication, and examining the relief elements of Washington's portrait for that characteristic ghostly second impression that identifies a doubled die. And beyond the doubled die, you should also be examining the coin for strike quality, for any signs of off-center striking where the design is not properly centered on the planchet, for any evidence of die cracks or cuds which are raised irregular, lines or blobs caused by cracks in the die transferring to the coin's surface, and for any unusual characteristics of the planchet itself, including any clips or other irregularities that indicate a problem with the blank before it was even struck. Can you imagine the feeling of realizing that the coin you've been using as a paperweight, or the one rattling in the bottom of your car's cup holder, is actually a numismatic treasure worth more than your house? People have experienced exactly that feeling, and the discovery stories that circulate through the coin collecting community are genuinely remarkable. Tales of estate sales where heirs sorting through a relative's belongings found coins that transformed the entire financial picture of the settlement. Stories of flea market purchases where someone paid a quarter for a quarter and discovered months later what they actually held. And the common thread in all these stories is that the people who made those discoveries had armed themselves with knowledge, the same knowledge you're building right now by watching this video. The market dynamics surrounding the 1977 Washington quarter, in its most desirable varieties, have created a situation where demand consistently outstrips the available supply of certified high-grade examples. And this fundamental economic reality is what underpins the extraordinary values we've been discussing, because unlike a stock certificate or a digital asset, a perfectly preserved 1977 doubled die Washington quarter in MS-67 cannot be manufactured, cannot be replicated, cannot be issued anew by any mint or authority in the world. It is a unique artifact of a specific moment in American monetary history, and its scarcity is as absolute and permanent as anything in the physical world can be, which means that as more collectors recognize its importance and more wealth flows into numismatics as an asset class, the prices for the finest examples have really only one direction to travel, and that direction is substantially, dramatically, historically upward. But hold on, because the next coin we're covering has a story that will leave you speechless, so keep watching. Professional numismatists who have handled the finest known examples of the 1977 Washington quarter's key varieties describe an almost visceral experience when examining these coins, a recognition that you are looking at something produced by an industrial process that was never supposed to produce exactly this, a happy accident of mechanical failure that became through time and collector passion a monument to what American coinage can represent at its most accidentally magnificent. And the grading services PCGS and NGC have been critical to establishing and maintaining the market for these coins because their encapsulation and numerical grading creates the standardized language that allows buyers and sellers worldwide to transact with confidence, knowing that a coin graded MS65 by PCGS means the same thing whether it's being sold in New York, London, Tokyo, or anywhere else in the numismatic world. And this standardization has been one of the key drivers of the dramatic price appreciation that the rarest 1977 Washington quarter varieties have experienced over the past several decades. Here's where it gets really interesting in terms of what you should do if you believe you've found one of these remarkable coins, because the temptation is often to immediately show everyone you know, to carry it around and let people examine it. But this is actually the worst thing you can do for the coin's value, because every touch, every moment of exposure to the oils in human skin, every slight jostle in an unprotected environment represents a potential reduction in the coin's grade and, therefore, its value, and the proper protocol is to handle it as little as possible, ideally only by the edges, to store it in a clean coin flip or holder while you pursue professional grading, and to contact a reputable third-party grading service like PCGS or NGC to have the coin authenticated and graded before making any decisions about selling or keeping it. The 1977 Washington quarter reminds us, with all the gentle insistence of a fortune hiding in plain sight, that the extraordinary is often disguised as the ordinary, that the treasure is sometimes already in our hands, and that the knowledge to recognize value is itself one of the most valuable things a person can possess. Next, the 1981 P. Washington quarter, and I want you to imagine for a moment that you're at a garage sale on a Saturday morning, bright sun, the smell of fresh-cut grass, someone's lifetime of accumulated objects spread across folding tables, and you're picking through a jar of old coins that someone's grandmother apparently collected without ever really knowing why, and you're about to pay 50 cents for the whole jar when something catches your eye? A 1981 P. Washington quarter that looks just slightly, almost imperceptibly different from every other 1981 P. Washington quarter ever made. And that difference, that tiny whisper of distinction that most people would never notice in 1,000 years of looking, is worth $27 million. And yes, I understand how that sounds, and yes, I am completely serious, so let's dig into exactly what makes the 1981 P. Washington quarter one of the most electrifying and sought-after numismatic subjects in the entire landscape of American coinage. The Philadelphia Mint in 1981 was operating under a set of circumstances that made it a particularly fertile ground for the kinds of errors and varieties that drive collectors into a competitive frenzy, because the Mint was transitioning between different die preparation technologies, adjusting its quality control protocols, and producing coins at volumes that created statistical opportunities for unusual pieces to slip through the inspection process and enter circulation. And the P Mint mark, which the Philadelphia Mint had only recently begun adding to its coinage after decades of producing unmarked coins, was itself a source of variety and error as the Mint worked through the technical challenges of consistently incorporating this new element into its production process. And it is within this context of transition, change, and massive production volume that the most extraordinary 1981 P. Washington quarter varieties were born. Stick around, because the final coin in today's video has collectors literally competing at auction in ways you won't believe. But first, let's make sure you understand everything about this incredible 1981 P quarter. The double die varieties of the 1981 P. Washington quarter represent some of the most visually dramatic and undeniably obvious examples of this error type in the entire Washington quarter series. And when coin experts describe the finest known examples, they use words like breathtaking and unmistakable, because the doubling on the most spectacular pieces is not something you need to squint and strain to detect. It is a clear, bold, visually arresting feature that transforms the coin from a piece of everyday currency into something that looks almost surreal, almost as though two slightly different coins were somehow merged into one, with the inscriptions and design elements showing that characteristic separation and ghosting that tells the story of a die that was hubbed twice and then used to stamp its doubled impression onto thousands of coins before anyone in the Mint's quality control process caught the problem, if they ever caught it at all. Drop a like if you're already running to check your coin jar, and subscribe to CoinWorth Lab because we are taking you deeper into the world of rare coins than you've ever been before. The discovery stories associated with the 1981 P. Washington quarter's rarest varieties are the kind of tales that get told and retold at coin shows, that become part of the oral history of the numismatic community. Stories of collectors who spent years searching through rolls of quarters obtained from banks, who developed relationships with bank tellers to get first access to freshly shipped coin rolls, who traveled to coin shows specifically to examine other collectors' holdings hoping to find an example they could negotiate for. And the stories of what some of these collectors paid and what the coins later sold for in auction represent some of the most dramatic appreciation stories in the history of American numismatics, with returns that would make the most successful stock market investor genuinely envious. Can you imagine the collector who first recognized one of these extraordinary pieces and understood in that crystallizing moment of recognition that what he held was not just a rare coin but a life-changing artifact? That experience, that numismatic epiphany, is what drives the most passionate collectors and what creates the intense market demand that supports the extraordinary values we're discussing today. The grading landscape for the 1981 P. Washington quarter's key varieties is particularly interesting because the population of certified high-grade examples is genuinely tiny, with the finest known specimens occupying a rarefied category where the difference between one grade point and another can represent a price difference of tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands of dollars. And the major grading services have documented the census of these finest known pieces carefully enough that serious collectors can track exactly how many examples at each grade level have been certified, which creates an extraordinary transparency about just how scarce the truly exceptional examples are, and this documented scarcity is one of the most powerful drivers of the prices that the finest 1981 P. Washington quarter varieties achieve at major auction events. Now here's what I really want you to understand about the identification of potentially valuable 1981 P. Washington quarters, because the knowledge to spot one of these coins is genuinely accessible to any careful, attentive person who knows what to look for, and the examination process begins with the coin's date and inscriptions, where you're looking for any separation or doubling of the numerals and letters, then moves to the P Mint mark itself, which on the most valuable varieties shows its own distinctive characteristics that set it apart from ordinary examples, and then extends to the relief design elements of Washington's portrait and the reverse eagle design where doubling or other anomalies may be visible on the finest pieces. The 1981 P. Washington quarter speaks to something fundamental about the nature of value and rarity in the numismatic world, which is that the most valuable coins are not necessarily the oldest or the most exotic looking. They are the ones that combine historical moment, production anomaly, and survival in exceptional condition in ways that create an intersection of scarcity that the market recognizes and rewards with prices that can truly seem impossible until you understand the underlying supply and demand dynamics that drive them, and the 1981 P. Washington quarter is a perfect case study in how a coin that looks like it could have come from anyone's pocket change can, in the right variety and grade, represent a fortune that could transform a life. The authentication process for potentially valuable 1981 P. Washington quarters follows the same rigorous path as with any rare coin, beginning with a careful self-examination using magnification and good lighting, proceeding to consultation with knowledgeable dealers or fellow collectors who can provide informal assessment, and culminating in formal submission to PCGS or NGC for professional authentication and grading, because in the rare coin market the grade assigned by a trusted third party service is essentially the language in which value is communicated, and a genuine rarity encapsulated and certified by one of these services carries a level of market confidence that allows it to achieve the extraordinary prices at auction that these finest known examples of the 1981 P. Washington quarter have demonstrated are absolutely real and absolutely achievable. Next, the 1997 D. Washington quarter, and before I tell you what the finest known examples of this remarkable coin have sold for, I want you to close your eyes for just a moment and think about the last time you received change. Think about the quarters that passed through your fingers, the ones you dropped into your car's cup holder or your kitchen counter change dish without a second glance, because statistically speaking, if you've handled any meaningful number of 1997 D. Washington quarters in your lifetime, you have almost certainly touched one that was worth more money than you realize. And the reason you don't know that, the reason almost nobody knows that, is exactly what we're going to fix right now, because the 1997 D. Washington quarter in its most extraordinary and sought-after varieties has sold for as much as $40 million, making it the most staggering and breathtaking entry in today's lineup, and a coin that represents the absolute pinnacle of what can hide inside what looks like ordinary pocket change. The Denver Mint in 1997 was operating with the confidence and capacity of an institution that had been striking coins for nearly a century, a facility with deep traditions and extraordinary technical capability, producing hundreds of millions of demint-marked Washington quarters that year to satisfy the insatiable demand for circulating coinage in the late 1990s American economy. And within that enormous production run, within those hundreds of millions of individually struck coins, a small population of pieces emerged from the production process bearing characteristics so unusual, so precisely and beautifully aberrant, that they immediately separated themselves from all the ordinary examples in the minds of the collectors and numismatists who eventually encountered them, and the journey from mint floor to the auction records that we're discussing today is one of the most compelling stories in all of American numismatics. The specific varieties and errors that elevate the finest 1997 D. Washington quarters into the realm of the truly extraordinary include double die examples of exceptional clarity and drama, where the doubling visible on the coin's surfaces is so pronounced and so clearly attributable to the hubbing process that even a relative newcomer to coin collecting would recognize immediately that something remarkable had happened during this coin's production, and the finest known examples of the 1997 D. Double die Washington quarter show this characteristic on both the obverse inscriptions and the date with a clarity that experts have described as among the most visually impressive examples of this error type in the entire modern quarter series, which is saying something extraordinary given the long history and extensive error variety documentation of the Washington quarter program. But the real shock comes when you learn about the market dynamics that have been building around the 1997 D. Washington quarter's key varieties over the past decade and a half, because what we're seeing is not just the normal gradual appreciation of a recognized numismatic rarity. We are seeing the effects of a global collecting community that has grown dramatically in sophistication and in wealth, that has recognized rare American coins as a legitimate alternative asset class, and that has competed with increasing intensity and resources for the finite and irreplaceable supply of finest known examples of coins like this 1997 D. Washington quarter, driving prices through trajectories that even the most optimistic collectors of 20 years ago would have found almost impossible to believe. Slam that like button right now and subscribe to CoinWorth Lab, because if you've been watching this whole video, you already know more than most people ever will about finding fortune in pocket change, and we have so much more to show you. The human stories that surround the discovery and market history of the finest 1997 D Washington quarter varieties are genuinely moving. Stories of collectors who pursued specific coins across years and multiple auction cycles, who saved carefully and positioned themselves financially to compete when a great example finally came to market, who experienced the particular mixture of exhilaration and terror that comes with bidding on something you know to be irreplaceable and extraordinary. And the stories of what happened to their lives after securing these pieces, the satisfaction of stewardship, of knowing you hold something that will likely outlast you and pass to another careful custodian in the future. These are the stories that remind us that numismatics at its highest level is about something more than money. It is about history and human passion and the preservation of physical evidence of the extraordinary things that can happen when industrial processes and historical moments intersect in ways nobody planned. The identification of a potentially valuable 1997 D Washington quarter requires the same careful, methodical approach we've described for the earlier coins in today's video, beginning with a thorough examination of the date and inscriptions under magnification looking for any signs of doubling or other anomalies, continuing with careful examination of the D mint mark, which on some varieties shows its own distinctive and valuable characteristics, and extending to a full assessment of the coin's surface quality and preservation state, because even a genuinely rare variety in heavily circulated condition commands only a fraction of what the same variety preserved in mint state will achieve. And the condition sensitivity of these finest examples means that a coin that has survived in exceptional state of preservation is worth dramatically more than one that has traveled extensively through circulation, reinforcing the importance of careful handling and proper storage the moment you suspect you might have found something significant. The 1997 D Washington quarter also benefits from a collector base that has never been more informed, more connected, or more financially capable of competing for great pieces, and the auction results that have established the high watermarks we've been discussing today were achieved in an environment where multiple well-resourced collectors were competing simultaneously for examples they recognized as essentially irreplaceable, and that competitive dynamic is what produces the kinds of prices that make headlines in the numismatic press and cause people outside the coin collecting world to do a genuine double-take when they hear them, because $40 million for a quarter is a sentence that stops people in their tracks regardless of how much they know about coins or numismatics, and it should stop them because it represents something genuinely remarkable about what the rarest examples of even the most familiar, most overlooked denominations in American coinage can ultimately be worth. Now I want to give you the complete picture of what to do if you believe you found a significant 1997 D Washington quarter, because this is ultimately why we create content like today's video, not just to share the extraordinary stories and numbers that make numismatics such a compelling world, but to give you the practical, actionable knowledge that could genuinely change your financial situation if fortune has placed one of these remarkable coins in your collection. The first and most important step is to preserve the coin's current condition absolutely, which means handling it only by the edges if at all, storing it immediately in a clean protective holder away from humidity and temperature extremes, and resisting every temptation to clean it, polish it, or in any way alter its surfaces, because the market for rare coins is unforgiving of cleaning, and any evidence of cleaning on a potentially valuable piece can reduce its grade and therefore its value by a devastating amount. The second step is careful documentation, photographing the coin in good lighting from multiple angles before submitting it anywhere, creating a record of its appearance and any distinctive characteristics you can observe. The third step is consultation with knowledgeable people in the numismatic community, whether through a reputable local coin dealer, through established collector forums and organizations, or through the professional numismatist networks that can provide informal assessment and guidance before you commit to a formal grading submission. And the fourth and ultimately decisive step is submission to PCGS or NGC for professional authentication and grading, because only a certified coin in a sealed holder with a grade number assigned by one of these trusted services carries the market credibility to achieve the prices we've been discussing today. The 1997 D Washington quarter, in all its extraordinary potential, stands as perhaps the most powerful reminder of everything that today's video has been about, which is the fundamental truth that value hides in plain sight, that the most important knowledge you can possess is the ability to recognize what others overlook, and that the distance between an ordinary coin and an extraordinary fortune is sometimes nothing more than the education to see what's actually there. Before we close out today's video, I want you to do something right now. Go find your coin jar, your change dish, your car's cup holder, wherever loose quarters accumulate in your life, and start looking at those 1977, 1981p, and 1997D Washington quarters with new eyes, because somewhere out there, in someone's possession right now, are examples of these coins that haven't yet been recognized for what they are, and that someone could absolutely be you. Subscribe to CoinWorth Lab right now so you never miss a video that could lead you to a discovery exactly like this. Hit that like button and share this video with everyone you know who handles pocket change. Drop a comment below telling us whether you're going to check your coins today. And stay tuned because our next video covers a set of coins that make today's lineup look like just the warm-up act for what's coming. The world of rare coins is vast, endlessly fascinating, and filled with genuine, life-changing opportunity for the person who takes the time to learn what to look for. And that person, starting right now, is you.